All right, welcome, kindergartners. So today's lesson is the fun one, where we get to finally use that paint that you guys got. You'll also notice that we need a black crayon and a brown crayon, and they might be easier to use if you have some old ones that don't have wrappers on. But even if they have the wrappers on, you can still use them. We're not really going to be rubbing on the side. It's just easier because we're going to be coloring the whole back side of the sheet with these two colors. It's just easier because you're going to be using them if you don't have that wrapper constantly slowing you down. So maybe peel off part of it from the tip down. That might just be one thing to help you out as you go. We're also going to need a fork, and please know that the paint that we're using today is a student-safe paint. This is not going to ruin any silverware that you have. As a student, please make sure you talk to mom and dad or grandma or whoever is with you, an adult, before using the silverware, and explain that you're going to be using it to work with the paint. In class, if they were in class, we would be using a plastic texture tool, but this will actually give you cooler looks. So you will also need a fork, and again, it's not going to ruin the silverware, and you'll just wash it right after, and it cleans up with water. And then on top of that, you'll need your brush that you got. And if it feels loose, just kind of give it to an adult and have the adult kind of squeeze it on. I gave out those brushes. They're a couple of years old, just in case I didn't get them back. So we'll talk more about getting the supplies back that need to get back later on. You'll also need that brown paint that was given out. So these are the supplies that you need today. I'm going to take the brush and the paint, carefully set those aside, maybe on a different table, just in case the coloring gets a little crazy. I'm going to take my crayons off, and we should all have something that looks like this. We have two bodies, and we have what we're guessing, and maybe I even told you, is the head. We're going to take it and we're going to flip it over to the other side. Now, our other side is blank, it's white, and this is the side that we are just going to go crazy on with our crayon. The goal here is to cover this whole piece of paper with the wax of the brown and the black crayon. Okay, so you can pick whatever color you want. With the black, you can go light. You don't have to push that hard. We're going to be making a grizzly bear, so it's mainly brown, and these are going to be some colors. There's no rules here. You just want to make sure that you're getting wax all over the entire paper. You can get a little bit lax. I'm not going to be super strict if you don't get all the way to the edge, but we want to get as close as possible, just a little bit to leave our hands holding the paper. All right, so you'll notice I'm doing some circles. I did some zigzaggy back and forth lines. Now I'm going to go over and grab the brown crayon. And if you do have some that have the wrapper off, it's just a nice, easy way to add a little base color and get rid of a lot of that white. And that is what we're really trying to do, is get rid of that white. Now, I could do the same thing with just going back and forth lightly with the tip of the crayon, so I'm not using the side anymore. I prefer doing it this way, using the tip of the crayon. Basically because I can put a little bit more pressure on it and I can get a darker brown. So we're going to be painting over the top of all this, which a lot of you might be thinking, well, why are we adding all this color? but we're going to be putting brown paint over the top, and we're going to use our fork in a little bit to scrape some of that paint off, and what it leaves is this brown and black crayon look, which gives us what's called texture in different multiple layers. So with the black now, again, our goal is to try to get rid of all of those little white spots. We're not going to get rid of all of them, but the majority of them. And again, you can see how close I'm getting to the edge without going all the way off. Some dark spots, light spots. Now so I did black to start, then I did brown, then I went back to black. So now I'm going to push a little harder with the brown and try to get a bunch of brown on here. And then it's time to paint. All right, so as you can see, I got brown and black everywhere. I can do as many different designs as I want, but once you get enough on there, I did 4 different layers with the 2 colors, and I got rid of a lot of the really white that was originally the color of the paper. So at this time, you're going to start to paint. Now, this paint is made for kids. It is made to come out of clothing. It is safe in case any other things happen. But if you're at home and there isn't an adult, I would ask the adult if you need a paint shirt or if you need to put on some play clothes or anything, just in case. A lot of you work with your adults at home right next to you, so they're probably going to let you know. If you're working at a table, sometimes it's smart to put a piece of newspaper or a couple pieces of scrap paper underneath, so please do that. I am going to paint using the brush, and I'm going to leave this little white around the edge, and I'm only going to paint on the part that I colored. And I have a desk that I'm working on that's just easy to clean up after. So I'm not going to put anything underneath. Again, ask an adult if they want you to or not. Okay. So we have not used a paintbrush this year. This is a paintbrush. Mine's a little bit bigger than yours. I have a couple rules with the paintbrush. So when we're using a flat brush like this, which is completely different than a brush like this. This one is more for watercolor, and it has more of a round end. This one is a flat brush that's made for thicker paints and is made to cover the area a little bit better. And we want to use kind of one side of it, and then when we get to the other side, then we flip it and use the paint that's on that other side. We try to only put paint on the bottom part of the brush. If we're getting paint on the metal, then we're doing something wrong. And when we hold it like a pencil. And so for my kindergartners, I always tell them you probably want to have your fingers on right about where the metal starts to touch the wood. So it would be like this. You'll notice I might hold mine a little bit further back. And if you do that too, that's fine as long as you have control. All right. What we never want to do is kind of like sweep with it, because a lot of times we're actually scraping the paint away. We want to go one direction, flip, come back the other direction. All right. So we're going to break this up into a couple different sections, 3 different sections, and that'll make sense when I show you all that. So please watch this whole next part of the video until the end, and then you'll be able to do it on your own. Don't do it as I'm doing it because you'll miss some directions. Okay, and again, make sure that you have your fork ready. All right, so I'm going to go in. You'll notice I have about that much paint. On the other side, there's not as much, but as I push down with this side, more will come through that. Okay, so I am going to paint kind of a section coming down this way. Okay, and I have to kind of work fast, which is hard because this is the first time you guys have used this paint, unless you have some temper paint at home. So I apologize, but if you have an adult next to you, they might kind of remind you that you got to work before the paint dries. And this paint dries pretty quick. So up here, it's already starting to kind of thin out because we put it on nice and thin, and it's starting to dry. So I put my paintbrush on top of this part that I haven't done yet. And this is the fun part where we get to kind of make all sorts of texture. And what we're doing is we're scraping that paint away. And the reason that it's able to be scraped is because of that wax layer that we made. You'll notice I'm taking my hands and moving. I'm kind of holding onto the paper where I don't have paint. And so I got to do this while the paint is wet. So I'm doing some like zigzags. If you want it to look more like fur, you can just do scrape marks everywhere like this. Totally up to you. This is going to be the fur on our bear. But this is just kind of an exploration of using paint and using a scraping tool. So do whatever you want to make it fun. So once I finish this section, now I'm going to put my brush over, and now I'm going to work on another section right about here. I like to start up at the top, and then I work down because that way my sleeve doesn't get put in it. Some people do it down here, and then they take their sleeve and they run it over. I like to work on the top and work my way over. Again, I'm left-handed, so I started on the right side. If you're right-handed, you should start over on the left side. Right, so I'm not going over the spot that I already scraped. I'm going right next to it. And then I'm going to put my brush again over here, grab my fork, and I can do totally different designs if I want. Or I can kind of do exactly what I was doing. And I can come into that other section and see if the paint's still wet. All right. Then I'm going to place the fork here. Again, I'm always putting it on a spot that has paint already, not on my table. It just helps, one less thing that I'm cleaning up. The adults at home will be happy about that. And so now I have this last section. So I'm going to paint that. You'll notice I go across, and I'm not using that other side just because of maybe the space. But I could do it like this if we were doing a bigger painting. Okay. Otherwise, just using that same side is fine. And then sometimes I go from the top and I come down. just to get that edge. Okay. If you are running out of paint by now, I still have a lot left and I used the same amount as I gave all of you. Look at your paper. You notice that when I put the paint on, I'm putting it on thin and I'm looking for like really big puddles of paint that might have came off. And I go in and I kind of smooth those out, right? I can take my brush if I have a lot left on my brush and I can kind of scrape it on the edge to help me. And then another reminder that I always remind my students is don't ever take the brush and rest it on here because it could tip the paint out. Again, I always put it on the painting where I just did. So I have this section. This is the last section. I hold on with my other hand in a spot that doesn't have paint. Again, I can do the same pattern or I can do a different one. I can work into that other area. Okay. And I wasn't going to show you, but some of our texture tools that we have at school have bigger scraping surfaces. So you'll notice I flipped it and I'm using the back end. And this just gives you a bigger scraping surface. So there's more of that brown and black crayon that's viewable. And you'll notice where I've already done or I started where it's dry. I can't get a lot of that to scrape off, but maybe on this second, yep, this is still wet. I can get a little bit of that, but it works really well when we have that wet paint. So that is what we're doing this week. I know this is a long video, so have fun. I thank you for watching this first, and now you get to enjoy. The paint I don't need back, so when you're done with it, you can keep it and or throw it away. Your fork, just take over to the sink, wash with some soap and water. The paint will come right off. And then your painting for the students, please ask an adult where they would like for it to dry. It won't take that long, but it should be left out flat to dry. And once it's all dry, if it's really wrinkly, maybe set some books over the top of it so that it's flat for next week. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.